Good morning, everyone. Welcome once again to Arnie's Fantasy World of Sports. And it's a great Tuesday morning here in North Carolina. It's nice, cool, sunny day, perfect for football. And last night we concluded the final game of Week 10 of the NFL schedule. The Vikings defeated the Bears, and that Bears offense is just, frankly, horrendous. Was not impressed with what I saw from the Bears at all on offense. Now, their defense shines. They've got a great run defense. Dalvin Cook was not the main culprit last night. Adam Thielen was with 2 touchdowns. So if you are an Adam Thielen owner, then certainly it was a great night to have him on your fantasy team. And this morning, we're going to spend a little bit of time looking at some potential ads for next week. And so here we go. Let's look at Miami. I want to look at the running back position with you first. Miami has a rookie, Salvon Ahmed. Ever heard of Salvon Ahmed before last week? Probably not. He had 84% of the Dolphins' team rushing attempts in Week 10's win over the Chargers. Now, the Dolphins were 3-3 before Tua took over at quarterback, and since he took over, the Dolphins are now 6-3. They've gone undefeated, and this week they play at Denver. I don't really think in 2020 where you play is as significant as it's been before. In fact, several teams, the Raiders are a good example. They have a better road record than they do home record. And so Miami invades Denver at 4:05 on Sunday afternoon. And it looks to me like Salvon Ahmed is a healthy waiver wire ad this week. He rushed 21 times for 85 yards and a touchdown. Jordan Howard was inactive last Sunday for the Dolphins, a healthy scratch. This Sunday, Jordan Howard has been released by the Dolphins. That, to me, tells you the impact of Salvon Ahmed at this point in time. He also ran 15 pass routes as the only Miami back to log a pass route in the game against the Chargers on Sunday. Now, Matt Breida has been out, we know, for at least 2 weeks with a hamstring issue. And it looks to me like with the emergence, if you will, of Ahmed, there's no real rush for Breida to even come back. If you do have Breida, I don't think he's going to start, and I think at the maximum, he might take away just a few carries, but not much from Ahmed. So if you have Salvon Ahmed on your waiver wire, I think it's a great ad at the running back position, particularly when you consider that the running back position is the one that usually is the thinnest. A lot of wide receivers still out there on the waiver wire, whatever league you're in, not that many running backs. And in my Yahoo League, 14-team league, I picked up Ahmed Sunday. Our waiver wire is basically open, and you have 4 pickups a week. So I got him Sunday. Glad I did. And I'm going to plan to start him this week against Denver. Unless I hear that he is not starting for the Dolphins, then Ahmed will be in my starting lineup fantasy this coming week against the Denver Broncos, who, frankly, if you look at what they did with last week with the Raiders, remember Josh Jacobs went off last week. He scored 2 rushing touchdowns, gained over 120 yards rushing, caught 4 balls out of the backfield, and then trash time, you had Booker come in, Devontae Booker, the former Bronco. He rushed for 80 yards and had 2 rushing touchdowns himself. So all told, the Broncos gave up over 200 rushing yards to the Raider 2 running backs and 4 rushing touchdowns. And it looks to me like Ahmed is the king of the heap right now in Miami. And so I think if you can get him, he is a great start. Miami's on a roll. We talked about yesterday all the 6-3 teams in the AFC. And, of course, the Dolphins are one of those. So there you go. I think Ahmed is my number one pick up this week on the waiver wire, the Miami Dolphins running back. A second running back that I think is of great interest, and a couple weeks ago I thought he was just trash, is Balaj for the Chargers. Kalen Balaj was on their practice squad, and we know that the Chargers have had injuries at running back starting early in the year when they lost their starter, then they lost their second string. I mean, it was one of those things. So Adam Gase, who is a big Kalen Balaj fan, calls him up from the practice squad. Last week, he had a great start. He was 7th among all running backs in the NFL in pass routes run. He ran 22 pass routes against the Dolphins. That ranked 7th, week 10 amongst all running backs. He also rushed 18 times for 68 yards, caught 5 of 6 targets for 34 yards. He's probably the unlikeliest of call-load backs that you would have, but he looks like right now he's locked in at number 1. Eckler is still out. Justin Jackson is on IL with a knee injury. So I look for Balaj to get more yardage this week. They play the Jets. That is just a great matchup for anyone. And so I'm planning on starting Kalen Balaj and Ahmed this week in my fantasy league. And if I do that, that means I'm taking James Conner and I'm putting him on the bench. Well, that's exactly what I'm going to do, unless my mind changes. James Conner has had primo matchups the last couple of weeks, guys. He was up against Dallas in week 9, and Dallas had one of the worst defensive in the league at the time. Look, he only got 3 fantasy points in my league that week. Last week, he's up against Cincinnati, another primo matchup for Conner, and he only gets 5.8 points. Now, they're playing Jacksonville this week, and if Conner's ever going to break out, it should be against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Following that, the Steelers in week 12 play Baltimore. That's a tough matchup, but just wait. Conner will probably have a good game against the Ravens. They finish up the fantasy schedule, Washington 13-week, week 14 at Buffalo, week 15 at Cincinnati, and week 16 they're home against Indianapolis. And Indianapolis has one of the top 3 rush defenses in all of the NFL. So it's not... Outside of week 11, there's no gimme game, and frankly, Conner just has not been performing the last 2 weeks. So I'm going to give Balaj a shot at it. I'm going to give Ahmed a shot at it. Now, if I find out neither of these guys are starting, then, of course, I will change my position. But that's where I'm at right now. How about the injury in New Orleans to Drew Brees? If you haven't heard, Drew Brees had an MRI yesterday. He injured some ribs. He punctured a lung. Out multiple weeks, it looks like. And so their lying in wait is Jameis Winston, former Tampa Bay Buccaneer, who has been Jekyll and Hyde for us fantasy owners. But he's been more Dr. Hyde than Jekyll. Even in games where Winston may throw some interceptions due to the fact he can run the ball, due to the fact he passes for touchdowns, he still has been a fantasy asset over the years. So now he's going to get his chance. Remember last year, Brees went out for a little while. Teddy Bridgewater got the start. It rejuvenated his career. And so now with Brees out for at least 2 or 3 weeks, it looks like, Jameis Winston will step in to the starting role there in New Orleans as their quarterback. I think it's a great setup for Winston. His weapons are back. He's got his wide receiver back. He's got Alvin Kamara back he can drop down to. He can still run. I'm looking for some really good fantasy weeks coming up for Jameis Winston. Now, he starts off, you can't beat this, playing against the Falcons, the worst ranked defense for quarterbacks in the NFL. So he's got Winston, the best situation possible going into the week. And I'm just looking for some really good things coming out of New Orleans with Jameis Winston. So that's my quarterback pick of the week. Now, I got a couple of wide receivers I want to talk about for just a few minutes. And this was a little tougher, actually, because I don't want to give you 5 wide receivers. I don't give you wide receivers that everybody owns. I'm looking at 10% owned or less. And so I want to start in Indianapolis with rookie Michael Pittman Jr. Michael Pittman Jr. topped 100 yards receiving for the first time in his career last weekend. He had 7 catches for 101 yards in the Colts' Thursday night win last week over the Titans. Now, he played 87% of the snaps the week before that, and he caught 4 balls for 56 yards on 7 targets. Then he bettered that Thursday night against the Titans. His targets, his catches, his yards, they were all new season highs, and Pittman has now established himself as Indianapolis' go-to. He's an everyday wideout moving forward. He had a long gain of 40 yards on a fourth quarter catch and run. He also rushed one time for 21 yards. And over the last 2 weeks, Pittman has seen 15 targets. Look, over the upcoming schedule, look at their schedule coming up. I think Pittman is someone you can put in your lineup like right now. Okay, they play Green Bay in Wisconsin this coming Sunday at 1:25. After that, Tennessee. And I told you what he just did against Tennessee, catching 7 for over 100. At Houston, at the Raiders, home against Houston, at Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's defense is really strong against the run, not so much against the pass. So I like Pittman now. I like him going down the stretch for later. I think he could be a huge add for you in your fantasy playoff run, which probably begins around week 14. And for that, that's a game against the Raiders. Now, another wide receiver, and again, I'm looking at wide receivers owned in less than 10% of leagues. So this is a little tough because last week that could have been Jacoby Myers. But now Jacoby Myers is owned in 48% of leagues. So let's look at Green Bay wide receiver Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Now, Valdes-Scantling is very inconsistent. But last week, 4 catches, 149 yards, and 1 touchdown. He caught 4 of 6 targets, and it was his new single-game career high in receiving yards. He simply outrun the cornerback Sidney Jones for the Jags on a 78-yard score. That was the longest play for Green Bay in the 2020 season, and it gave the Packers its first touchdown in the first quarter. It was also Scantling's 5th touchdown of 40 yards plus since the start of 2019. So Scantling's really one of these boomer bust players, isn't he? But with Aaron Rodgers as his quarterback, and there's the key, okay? Let's don't fool anybody or try to trick anyone. You put Scantling on a different team, probably not going to say he's on my list of free agent ads. But due to the fact he's playing on a team in Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers, that's a huge plus for Scantling. Let's talk about one more running back this morning. I want to talk about LaMichael Pirine for the New York Jets. And I know there are guys in the chat room who are Jet fans. The Jets said during their bye week they were expecting to give Pirine more work. ESPN's Rich Cimini reports that LaMichael Pirine will be the featured back over the remainder of the season as the organization tries to determine if he can be a future RB1, end of quote. He had been the number 2 behind Frank Gore, which is classic Adam Gase, isn't it? But Cimini writes, the Jets need to see if their young players have any juice. And so Pirine, who is a 4th-round rookie, will probably see double-digit touches down the stretch. Of course, he's in a Jet offense.